The morning mist clung to the glass walls of Zara Thorne's greenhouse like ghostly fingers, filtering the pale light of Kepler-44 to B's distant sun into ethereal beams. She moved through her sanctuary of earth-born plants and native flora with practiced grace, her fingers trailing along emerald leaves and checking the moisture levels of her hybrid soil mixtures. This was her world, a place where science and intuition merged to create something beautiful. From the harsh realities of frontier life, Zara had been on the colony for 3 years now, long enough to stop counting the days until her next supply shipment from Earth, long enough to call this place home. Her greenhouse sat at the eastern edge of New Geneva, the colony's main settlement, where the prefabricated buildings gave way to the wild beauty of an alien world. Here, she cultivated the medicines that kept 5,000 colonists healthy, combining traditional botanical knowledge with cutting-edge genetic modification techniques. The work was demanding but fulfilling. Each morning brought new challenges: a crop blight that required a novel antifungal compound, a child's fever that responded only to a specific combination of earth herbs and native spores, or the endless task of developing hardier food crops that could thrive in the planet's unique soil chemistry. Zara loved every moment of it, even when she worked 18-hour days during the harvest season. She was examining a particularly promising strain of medicinal moss when she heard a soft whimper from the back corner of the greenhouse. Near her experimental plots, Zara froze, her heart hammering. The colony's perimeter was supposed to be secure, but the automated defense grid had been malfunctioning lately, and the indigenous wildlife could be unpredictable. Moving carefully through the maze of growing tables and hydroponic systems, Zara followed the sound to its source. What she found made her breath catch in her throat. Curled among the broad leaves of her healing plants lay a figure unlike anything she'd ever seen. The being was humanoid but clearly alien, with skin that seemed to shimmer between silver and pale blue, as if lit from within by some internal luminescence. Their hair cascaded in waves of deepest violet, and even unconscious, they radiated an otherworldly beauty that made Zara's pulse quicken. But it was the wounds that commanded her immediate attention. Deep gashes ran along the being's left arm and torso, the edges cauterized as if by some kind of energy weapon. The alien's breathing was shallow and labored, and when Zara knelt beside them, she could see fever burning in their features. Every protocol she'd learned during her colonial training screamed at her to contact security immediately. First contact situations were supposed to be handled by trained diplomats and military personnel, not civilian botanists. But looking at the injured alien, Zara felt something deeper than duty stirring in her chest, a healer's instinct that recognized suffering regardless of species. She made her choice in that moment, one that would change everything. Working quickly, Zara gathered her emergency medical supplies and began treating the wounds. The alien's physiology was different from human. Their blood had a faint opalescent quality, and their skin felt cool and smooth like polished stone, but the basics of trauma care seemed to apply. She cleaned the wounds with antiseptic solution, applied synthetic skin grafts, and administered a broad-spectrum antibiotic that she hoped would be compatible with alien biology. As she worked, Zara found herself studying the being's features more closely. Their face was angular yet soft, with high cheekbones and a delicate jawline that spoke of an almost ethereal beauty. When their eyes fluttered open briefly during her ministrations, she glimpsed irises that swirled with colors like captured galaxies. Deep purples and blues shot through with silver stars. The alien seemed to sense her presence, their gaze focusing on her with an intensity that made her feel exposed and understood all at once. For a moment, neither of them moved, and Zara felt a connection spark between them that transcended language or species. Then the being's eyes closed again, and they slipped back into unconsciousness. Zara spent the rest of the day setting up a concealed recovery area in the greenhouse's storage room, installing climate controls and medical monitoring equipment. She told herself it was just temporary. Once the alien was stable, she would contact the proper authorities. But as she watched them sleep, noting the way their skin glowed softly in the dim light, she found herself reluctant to break the spell of secrecy that surrounded them. That evening, Marcus Reed stopped by for his weekly check on the medical supplies. The colony administrator was a good man, conscientious and fair, but he was also a stickler for protocol. As he reviewed her inventory reports, Zara felt every muscle in her body tense with the effort of appearing normal. "You seem distracted tonight," Marcus observed, his kind eyes studying her with concern. "Everything all right, just tired," Zara replied, forcing a smile. "The new growth hormone trials are keeping me busy." Marcus nodded but didn't look entirely convinced. "You know you can talk to me if something's bothering you, right? We're a long way from Earth out here. We have to look out for each other." The sincerity in his voice made Zara's chest tighten with guilt, but she simply nodded and thanked him. After he left, she returned to her hidden patient, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. The aliens stirred as she approached, their eyes opening fully for the first time. When they saw her, their expression shifted from wariness to something that might have been gratitude. They tried to sit up, wincing at the movement, and Zara quickly moved to support them. "Easy," she said softly. "You're safe here," to her. Surprise, the aliens spoke, their voice melodious despite their obvious pain. "You helped me. Why?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with implications that Zara was only beginning to understand. She looked into those swirling, galaxy-filled eyes and felt something fundamental shift in her worldview. "Because you needed help," she said simply. "That's what healers do." The alien's lips curved in what might have been a smile, and in that moment, Zara knew that her life had just taken an irreversible turn towards something beautiful and dangerous. The alien's name was Nix Velter, and they spoke with a voice like wind chimes dancing in starlight. Over the following days, as Zara tended to their wounds in the hidden sanctuary of her greenhouse, she learned fragments of their story, pieces of a larger tapestry that both fascinated and terrified her. "My people call themselves the Cyrilleth," Nix explained on their 4th day of recovery, their luminescent skin now showing healthy color instead of the pale gray of injury. "We are, how would you say, caretakers of life itself, healers, like you." Zara sat cross-legged on the floor beside the makeshift bed, organizing medicinal samples while she listened. She'd found excuses to spend every free moment in the storage room, drawn by something deeper than medical curiosity. Watching Nix's graceful movements, hearing their melodic accent shape familiar words into something exotic, she felt her heart responding in ways that defied logic. "Caretakers," she repeated, testing the word. "Is that why you came here, to study our plants?" Nix's expression darkened, their galaxy eyes clouding with something that looked like grief. "No, I came because my people are dying." The simple statement hung heavy in the recycled air of the storage room. Zara set down her samples and turned to face Nix fully, seeing the weight of sorrow in their ethereal features. "A plague," Nix continued, their voice barely above a whisper. "It began in our core worlds and spread outward. We have tried everything, our greatest healers, our most advanced biotechnology. Nothing stops it. Our children, they are born weak, and many do not survive their first year." Zara felt her healer's instincts surge to life. "That's horrible. But what does that have to do with Earth colonies? We discovered that worlds touched by human presence show resistance to the plague. Something in your biology, your way of changing ecosystems, it creates antibodies we cannot synthesize ourselves." Nix's gaze met hers, intense and pleading. "I was sent to study this phenomenon, to find a cure for my people." "Sent by who?" "My mentor, Elder Voss. She believed that cooperation between our species might save both our worlds." Nix's expression grew bitter. Not everyone agreed with her approach. Before Zara could ask what that meant, footsteps echoed through the main greenhouse. She quickly activated the storage room's sound-dampening field and motioned for Nix to remain silent. Through the door's small window, she watched Jenna cross-navigate between the growing tables, her security uniform pristine despite the early hour. Jenna had been Zara's closest friend since arriving on the colony. They'd bonded over late night conversations about Earth, shared fears about their families light years away, and a mutual appreciation for terrible romantic novels, downloaded from the colony's limited entertainment database. If anyone would understand the impossible situation Zara found herself in, it would be Jenna. But as Zara watched her friend's careful movements, noting the way Jenna's hand rested casually on her sidearm, she realized that friendship might not be enough to overcome duty. "Morning, Zara," Jenna called out cheerfully. "Marcus sent me to check on the new atmospheric filters. He's getting reports of unusual energy signatures in this sector." Zara's blood turned to ice. The medical equipment she'd installed for Nix operated on different power frequencies than her standard botanical gear. Of course the sensors would detect anomalies. "Everything's normal here," Zara replied, stepping out of the storage room and sealing it behind her. "Just running some overnight growth experiments." Jenna's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mind if I take a look?" "Standard procedure." "You understand." For a moment, Zara considered confessing everything. Jenna was reasonable, compassionate. Surely she would see that Nix posed no threat. But then she remembered the fear in the colony after the last alien contact report. From the outer settlements, 3 miners had vanished without a trace, and the official response had been to increase military patrols and restrict civilian movement. "Of course," Zara said, forcing calm into her voice. "Though I should warn you, the new hormone treatments smell terrible. You might want to hold your breath." As Jenna moved through the greenhouse, scanning for anomalies with her handheld detector, Zara's mind raced. The storage room's shielding would hide Nix's presence, but only if they remained perfectly still. Any movement, any sound, would trigger the sensors. The minutes stretched like hours. Jenna's detector beeped occasionally as it registered the normal electronic signatures of hydroponic systems and grow lights. Twice she paused near the storage room, and Zara felt her heart stop completely. But each time, Jenna moved on, apparently satisfied with her readings. "All clear," Jenna finally announced, holstering her scanner. Though Marcus wasn't wrong about the energy fluctuations, "Make sure you're not overloading any circuits with those experiments." After Jenna left, Zara slumped against the storage room door, her legs suddenly weak with relief. When she opened the door, she found Nix sitting exactly where she'd left them. But their skin had taken on a deeper luminescence, a sign of stress. She was beginning to learn. "Your friend suspects," Nix said quietly. "No, she was just doing her job." But even as Zara said it, she wondered if it was true. Jenna had always been perceptive, and the careful way she'd moved through the greenhouse suggested more than routine inspection. Over the following days, as Nix's strength returned, their conversations deepened beyond medical necessity. Nix told her about Cyrilleth culture cities that floated among the clouds of gas giants, art forms that literally grew and evolved over centuries, a philosophy that viewed all life as interconnected threads in a cosmic tapestry. In return, Zara shared her own dreams and fears. She told Nix about her childhood on Earth's agricultural stations, about losing her parents in a transport accident, about choosing botanical medicine as a way to heal a world that had given her so much pain. She spoke of loneliness on the frontier, of the weight of being responsible for so many lives, of wondering if she'd ever find someone who truly understood her. "On my world," Nix said one evening as they shared a meal of synthesized proteins and hydroponic vegetables, "we believe that some souls are created in pairs, not always romantically, sometimes as friends, sometimes as teachers and students, but always as complements to halves of a greater whole." Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "And you think we're complements?" Nix's smile was gentle but certain. "I think the universe brought me to your greenhouse for more than medical attention." That night, as Zara lay on her narrow bunk in the staff quarters, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Nix's eyes had sparkled when they smiled, the graceful fluidity of their movements, the musical quality of their laughter. She was falling in love with an alien whose very presence on the colony could spark an interstellar incident. The next morning brought crisis. Marcus arrived at the greenhouse with 2 security officers, his expression grim with official business. "Zara, we need to talk," he said, and she knew from his tone that their careful secrecy had finally crumbled. Her mind raced through possible explanations, denials, delays, anything to protect Nix. But as she looked at Marcus's kind face, now hardened by duty and disappointment, she realized that the time for lies had passed. "I can explain," she began, but Marcus held up a hand. Long-range sensors detected an unregistered vessel in the outer system 3 days ago. It matches no known human configuration. His eyes searched her face, looking for answers she wasn't ready to give. Zara, if you know something about this, you need to tell me now. The safety of the entire colony could be at stake. Behind the storage room door, Nix waited in silence, their fate hanging on Zara's next words. In that moment, she understood that love sometimes required the greatest act of faith, trusting that truth, however dangerous, was stronger than any lie. Marcus Reed had always prided himself on being a fair administrator, someone who could balance the competing demands of colonial survival with basic human decency. But as he stood in Zara's greenhouse, watching her face cycle through emotions, he couldn't quite read. He felt the weight of impossible decisions settling on his shoulders like lead. "Zara," he said quietly, dismissing the security officers with a gesture. "Whatever's going on here, we can work through it together. But I need the truth." She looked at him for a long moment, her dark eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination that reminded him of his own daughter back on Earth. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady despite the tremor in her hands. "There's someone I need you to meet." The revelation of Nix's presence hit Marcus like a physical blow. In his 15 years of colonial administration, he'd dealt with equipment failures, natural disasters, even a brief rebellion by miners upset about working conditions. But first contact with an alien species, that was so far beyond his experience that he felt momentarily paralyzed. Nix emerged from the storage room with the fluid grace that seemed characteristic of their species, but Marcus could see the wariness in their luminescent features. They were beautiful in an otherworldly way that made his breath catch, but it was their obvious intelligence that truly unnerved him. This wasn't some primitive life form to be cataloged and studied. This was a being capable of complex thought, emotion, and possibly deception. "Administrator Reed," Nix said, their melodic voice carrying a formality that hadn't been present when they spoke with Zara. "I understand my presence here creates difficulties for you." Marcus found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. That's one way to put it. He looked between Nix and Zara, seeing the way they stood slightly closer together than mere friendship would suggest. "How long has this been going on?" 6 days. Zara answered immediately. "I found them injured. I couldn't just let them die, Marcus. You should have contacted security immediately." The words came automatically, but even as he spoke them, Marcus felt their inadequacy. Looking at Nix, seeing the intelligence and vulnerability in their alien features, he couldn't honestly say he would have made a different choice. "Would your security forces have provided medical care?" Nix asked gently. "Or would they have seen me as a threat to be contained?" The question hung in the air, unanswered but not unanswerable. Marcus thought of Colonel Hayes, the military liaison, who'd been pushing for stronger defensive measures since the mining station incident. Hayes would have seen Nix as a specimen first, a potential enemy second, and a sentient being a distant third. "What do you want?" Marcus asked finally. "Why are you here?" As Nix explained about the plague affecting their people and their mission to find a cure, Marcus felt the situation's complexity expanding exponentially. This wasn't just about one alien refugee, it was about potential biological warfare, interspecies diplomacy, and scientific discoveries that could revolutionize medicine for both species. But it was also about the way Zara looked at Nix, and the way Nix's entire demeanor softened when they spoke to her. Marcus had been married for 23 years before the cancer took his wife. He recognized love when he saw it, regardless of species. "I need to report this," he said, though the words felt like a betrayal. "You understand that, right? This is bigger than our little colony." "I know," Zara said quietly. "But Marcus, what Nix told me about their people's plague, if we could help them find a cure. Think about what that might mean for relations between our species." Before Marcus could respond, his communicator chirped urgently. The display showed an incoming priority message from Earth Command, and his blood turned cold as he read the sender's identification. Admiral Brooks, Director of Colonial Security, Administrator Reed. Brooks' voice crackled through the static of interstellar communication when Marcus accepted the call. "We've detected anomalous readings in your system. Prepare for immediate inspection by a special operations team. Estimated arrival, 18 hours. The transmission cut off before Marcus could respond, leaving the three of them staring at each other in stunned silence. Admiral Brooks was known throughout the colonial administration for his hardline approach to alien contact. Under his directive, 3 separate first contact situations had ended in military action rather than diplomacy. 18 hours, Marcus repeated numbly. They'll be here in 18 hours. Nix's luminescence dimmed noticeably. If your military finds me here, it will confirm their suspicions that my people are a threat. The consequences for both our species could be catastrophic. Then we get you off-world, Zara said immediately. Your ship, can you reach it? Possibly. But leaving now would abandon my mission. My people are still dying while I search for answers that might exist in your agricultural systems. Marcus felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The decision he made in the next few minutes could determine whether humanity's second major alien contact would end in cooperation or conflict. He thought of his wife, of the daughter he'd left behind on Earth, of the 5,000 colonists who trusted him to keep them safe. He also thought of the way Zara had looked when she'd introduced him to Nix, not like someone presenting a threat, but like someone sharing a miracle. There might be another way, Marcus said slowly, an idea forming in his mind. Zara, how long would you need to complete a comprehensive analysis of Nix's biological samples? Something that could provide real data about this plague, with full laboratory access, 48 hours, maybe less. Why? Because if we're going to convince Admiral Brooks that cooperation is more valuable than conquest, we need to show him concrete benefits. Marcus turned to Nix. Would your people be willing to share medical data if it meant potential cooperation? Instead of conflict, Elder Voss would approve such an exchange, Nix said carefully. But the risk is worth taking, Marcus finished, because the alternative is almost certainly war. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Marcus worked to establish secure communication with Elder Voss, using Nix's ship's equipment to bridge the technological gap between species. Zara began her biological analysis, working with an intensity that reminded Marcus why she was considered one of the colony's most valuable specialists. But it was the growing connection between Zara and Nix that truly captured his attention. He watched them work together with an almost telepathic understanding, Nix providing insights into Cyrilleth biology while Zara translated those concepts into human scientific framework. They moved around each other with unconscious grace, their different physiologies creating a dance of complementary motion. When Admiral Brooks' ship arrived precisely on schedule, Marcus was waiting in the landing bay with his carefully prepared presentation. Brooks emerged from his transport like a storm front given human form, tall, angular, with gray eyes that seemed to see threats in every shadow. Administrator Reed, Brooks said without preamble, I trust you're prepared to explain the energy signatures we've been tracking. I am, Admiral, and I believe you'll find the explanation illuminating. The conference room where Marcus revealed Nix's presence erupted in controlled chaos. Brooks' security team immediately drew weapons, though they didn't fire thanks to Marcus's quick intervention. The Admiral himself showed no visible emotion, but Marcus could see the calculations running behind his eyes. You've harbored an alien infiltrator for over a week, Brooks said with deadly calm. Do you understand the implications of that action? I understand that we have an unprecedented opportunity for peaceful cooperation, Marcus replied steadily. Nix comes from a species facing extinction. They're offering to share medical technology in exchange for our help. Isn't that exactly the kind of alliance Earth needs as we expand into the galaxy? Brooks studied Nix with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. And what guarantees do we have that this isn't some elaborate deception, a Trojan horse designed to infiltrate our colonies? It was Nix who answered, their voice carrying a dignity that transcended species barriers. Admiral Brooks, I understand your caution, but I offer you something more valuable than guarantees. I offer you proof. What happened next would be recorded in both human and Cyrilleth histories as the moment when two civilizations chose trust over fear. Nix transmitted biological data that revolutionized human understanding of cellular regeneration, while Zara presented her analysis, showing how human agricultural techniques could indeed provide the foundation for a plague cure. But it was the personal cost that Marcus remembered most clearly. Brooks agreed to support limited cooperation, but only under strict conditions. Nix would be relocated to a secure research facility on Earth. Zara would be transferred to oversee the biological exchange program, and their relationship, the love that had sparked this entire crisis, would be subject to constant monitoring and official oversight. As he watched Zara and Nix say goodbye in the sterile confines of the holding bay, Marcus felt the bitter taste of compromise. They had prevented a war, possibly saved two species, and laid the groundwork for unprecedented cooperation. The price was two hearts torn apart by the machinery of politics and fear. But as he filed his final report, Marcus included a personal recommendation that would echo through the bureaucratic hell. Jenna Cross had always believed in following orders, respecting authority, and maintaining the delicate balance that kept frontier colonies alive. But as she watched the transport carrying Zara and Nix disappear into the star-scattered darkness, she felt something fundamental crack inside her chest, not just sympathy for her friend's pain, but a bone-deep certainty that what had just happened was wrong. 3 weeks had passed since Admiral Brooks' departure, and the colony felt different. There was a tension in the air, whispered conversations that died when authority figures passed by, and a growing sense that they had all witnessed something that would change everything. Jenna found herself at the center of these quiet rebellions, her security clearance and natural charisma making her an unlikely focal point for dissent. It started small. Dr. Patel in the medical bay mentioned that Zara's preliminary research on seroleth biology could revolutionize their understanding of human healing. Engineer Torres wondered aloud why they couldn't establish direct communication with Nix's people. Instead of routing everything through Earth Command, even Marcus, in his careful administrator's way, began asking questions about the ethics of separating beings who had clearly formed deep emotional bonds. But it was Cale Thorne's arrival that transformed whispered doubts into organized resistance. Zara's younger brother had inherited the family's stubborn streak amplified by a decade. He arrived on the next supply transport, officially assigned as a structural engineer, but clearly driven by a desperate need to understand what had happened to his sister. Jenna met him at the landing bay, recognizing Zara's dark eyes and determined jawline in his angular features. "Where is she?" were his first words, delivered with an intensity that cut through the usual pleasantries of colonial rival protocols. "Earth," Jenna replied simply, reassigned to a classified research facility, along with her friend. Kel's expression darkened. "The alien, the one she risked everything to save. Their name is Nix," Jenna said firmly. And yes, Zara risked everything because she believed it was right. Over the following days, Jenna watched Cale integrate into the colony's social fabric with remarkable speed. He was charming when he needed to be, serious when the situation demanded it, and possessed an engineer's practical approach to solving problems that others considered impossible. Within a week, he had identified the key figures in what was becoming an underground network of humans who believed the official response to first contact had been catastrophically wrong. "The thing is," Cale said during one of their late-night planning sessions in the abandoned mining shelter that had become their unofficial headquarters, "this isn't just about Zara and Nix. This is about what kind of species we want to be when we meet other intelligent life." Around the table sat an unlikely collection of colonial personnel, Jenna with her security access, Dr. Patel with his medical expertise, Torres with her engineering knowledge, Marcus with his administrative authority, and a dozen others who had decided that blind obedience was less important than moral courage. "The communication logs I've been monitoring suggest Earth Command is planning to use Nix as leverage in broader negotiations," Jenna reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. "They're treating them like a bargaining chip, not a person." Meanwhile, Dr. Patel added, "The medical data Nix provided has already led to breakthrough treatments for 3 previously incurable conditions. The potential for cooperation is enormous, but Command seems more interested in maintaining control than fostering partnership." Marcus leaned back in his chair, looking older than his years. I've been receiving unofficial communications from other administrators. Colonies in 6 different systems are reporting similar situations. Alien contact met with military response rather than diplomatic outreach. There's a pattern here, and it's not encouraging. It was Torres who asked the question they were all thinking. So what do we do about it? The answer came from an unexpected source. 3 days later, as Jenna was conducting routine perimeter maintenance, her scanner detected an incoming transmission on the frequency Nix had taught them to use for emergency communication. The message was brief but electrifying. This is Elder Voss of the Cyrileth Collective. I seek communication with the humans who befriended Nix Velter. I have a proposal that may benefit both our peoples. The transmission included coordinates for a meeting point in the outer system, far from Earth Command's surveillance network. Elder Voss was coming to them, risking everything on the hope that some humans still believed in cooperation over conquest. Jenna felt her pulse quicken as she realized the magnitude of what was being offered. Direct communication with alien leadership, bypassing the military channels that had turned first contact into a hostage situation. It was exactly the kind of unauthorized action that could end careers or start revolutions. We're really going to do this, she said aloud, testing the words against her conscience and finding them surprisingly comfortable. The next week involved the most complex logistical operation Jenna had ever attempted. Using Torres's engineering expertise, they modified a long-range mining vessel to carry a small diplomatic team to the rendezvous point. Marcus provided official cover by authorizing an extended mineral survey mission, while Dr. Patel prepared medical supplies and communication equipment. But it was Kale who solved their biggest problem: how to bring Zara and Nix to the meeting without triggering every security protocol in the Earth Command playbook. My sister's not just a botanist, he explained during their final planning session. She's also one of the best infiltration specialists Earth ever trained. They recruited her from agricultural college specifically because she could think creatively about biological systems and security protocols. Jenna stared at him. Are you telling me Zara has military training, special operations, classified level that even she probably doesn't know I know about it? Kel's smile held no humor. The thing about Zara is that she's always been better at getting into places than getting out of them. But if we can create the right kind of distraction. The plan they developed was audacious in its simplicity. During Zara's weekly transport to the research facility, where she and Nix were being held, Kale would trigger a catastrophic systems failure that would force an emergency landing at the nearest way station. In the confusion of evacuation and repair, Jenna's team would extract both prisoners and transport them to the rendezvous with Elder Voss. This is treason, Marcus said quietly as they made final preparations. You all understand that, right? If this goes wrong, we'll be lucky to end up in prison rather than facing execution for collaboration with enemy forces. Enemy forces? Dr. Patel laughed bitterly. Nix saved more lives in 6 days than most military operations save in 6 months. The only enemies here are the ones who think love and cooperation are threats to be eliminated. On the day of the operation, everything went wrong in exactly the right ways. Kel's sabotage was masterful, creating genuine system failures that required exactly the kind of emergency response their plan needed. Jenna's extraction team moved with precision born of desperation, bypassing security protocols with information that Marcus's administrative access provided. When Zara and Nix stepped aboard their modified transport, Jenna felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Zara looked exhausted but determined, while Nix's luminescence had dimmed to barely visible levels, a sign of prolonged stress. That made Jenna's heart ache with sympathetic pain. You came for us, Zara said simply, her voice hoarse with emotion. Of course we did, Jenna replied, pulling her friend into a fierce embrace. Did you think we'd abandon you to the bureaucrats? The journey to meet Elder Voss took 18 hours, during which Jenna watched Zara and Nix slowly come back to life in each other's presence. Their reunion was quiet but profound. Two beings who had been separated by forces beyond their control, finally able to touch, to speak, to simply exist in the same space without fear or surveillance. Elder Voss's ship was unlike anything in human design. Organic curves that seemed grown rather than built, surfaces that pulsed with gentle bioluminescence, and an overall sense of harmony between technology and nature that spoke to fundamentally different approaches to engineering. Elder Voss themselves was ancient even by Cyrileth standards, their skin bearing the deep luminescence of centuries, and their eyes holding the weight of countless decisions. When they met the human delegation, their first words transformed everything Jenna thought she knew about interspecies relations. "We have been watching your species for over a century," Elder Voss said, their voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Jenna's bones. Not as conquerors or judges, but as gardeners, hoping to see what kind of fruit your civilization might bear. Nix's mission was not our first contact with humanity, it was our test of whether you were ready for partnership rather than domination. The revelation hit the human delegation like a physical blow. They weren't dealing with desperate refugees seeking help. They were facing representatives of a civilization advanced enough to observe humanity undetected for generations. And Marcus asked, his administrator's instincts taking over despite his shock, "What was your conclusion?" Elder Voss's attention turned to Zara and Nix, still standing.